Hi, I'm James Izimoha and you're watching A News. Here are your top stories. 30 bodies recovered from water at plane crash site near Washington, D.C. airport. 3 Israeli hostages released in Gaza as part of a ceasefire deal. Turkey, Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan reaffirmed their commitment to regional cooperation by signing the Ankara Declaration. A passenger jet and a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter collided mid-air near Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport and crashed into the Potomac River. 30 bodies have been recovered from the water at the crash site.
Multiple deaths have been reported after a passenger jet and U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter collided mid-air and crashed into the Potomac River Wednesday night near Reagan Washington National Airport. Police said several agencies were involved in a search and rescue operation in the river. The airport said late on Wednesday that all takeoffs and landings had been halted as emergency personnel responded. The Federal Aviation Authority said PSA Airlines was operating a regional flight for American Airlines, which had departed from Wichita, Kansas. American Airlines said 60 passengers and 4 crew were on the plane. A U.S. official said 3 soldiers were aboard the helicopter. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas said on social media that, "We know there are fatalities," though he did not say how many. According to local media, at least 30 bodies had been recovered from the river. The National Transportation Safety Board said it was gathering more information on the incident.
Our correspondent Nick Harper brings us the latest updates from the crash site.
Well, a very grim picture unfolding here in Washington, D.C. tonight. You can see the rescue team still working at Ronald Reagan Airport. These are live pictures from the airport. Those rescue crews on the scene, about 300 of them, we're told, searching the water because the plane and the helicopter both came down in the Potomac River that borders the Ronald Reagan Airport. And that's making it much harder. The plane breaking into several pieces, the helicopter turning upside down in the water. So those rescue crews are trying to find survivors, but it's now many hours since this plane crash. And the longer it goes on, the chances of survival become slimmer and slimmer. One of the officials at a press conference earlier said, quite simply, "We don't know if there are any survivors." The mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, quite simply said this was very tragic. An investigation has now started by the National Transportation Safety Board. That is underway, but Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C., said essentially that should be taking place in the background. It should not be the focus. Rather, the focus should be all about trying to pull people alive from the freezing water. But that search and rescue operation seems to be moving very quickly to becoming a search and recovery operation, rather pulling bodies from the water rather than alive passengers who were hoping to meet up with loved ones who were waiting at the airport for them this evening. The FBI, though, as part of this investigation, has already ruled out terrorism, saying there is no links to criminality or terrorism in all of this as it unfolded. Quite simply, it seems to have been a tragic accident, but exactly how it happened, how the plane, how the helicopter ended up being in the same airspace at the same time, that is something that will be a central question that needs to be answered in the unfolding investigations. Nick Harper for A News in Washington, D.C.
The terrific crash was observed by one of the residents. The eyewitness gave more details on the final moments of the crash.
Everything happened somewhere around 8:50 p.m. local time, Eastern time. I was getting ready to go to bed, laying down when I heard the bang bang, a very unusual sound, something you don't hear on a daily basis. It's more like on a war zone, something you hear on movies, action. So that caught my attention. I looked up the sky, I looked up the window, and all I could see at that moment was just smokes from the south side of Reagan Airport. Uh, and then I started taking videos because I've started to see some um, activities. Like that's like 5-10 minutes after. The water temperature is 39 degrees. We're talking about hypothermia. It is absolutely cold. We're talking about a minute before you get hypothermia. So it's inevitable. It's going to happen. This river has a very strong current going south. So 4 hours since the plane crash, we're talking about 60 people recovery mission. Some of them, 100%, their bodies that remain have floated down the river. I would say maybe by 3 to 4, now even 5 miles radius. Okay, between ice, between frozen water, strong currents. It's very challenging mission at the moment.
Meanwhile, aviation expert Jeffrey Thomas commented on the plane crash in Washington, D.C.
Firstly, we've got an aircraft that is involved in an explosion, a mid-air collision. There was an explosion, a fireball at 350 feet above the water, so it plummets down. Then it sinks into freezing cold water. The chances of survival from that are remote, I would say, and indications are at this very minute is that there are few, if any, survivors from this terrible tragedy. My analysis is that the CRJ 700, the American Airlines flight, was complying with air traffic control directions to land at Reagan National Airport on the Potomac River. The Black Hawk helicopter, US Army, had taken off in close proximity, and it had made 6 course changes as it climbed in altitude before it impacted the CRJ at about 350 feet off the Potomac River. What that tells me is that this was a training flight of the helicopter. It apparently did not have its ADS-B tracking system turned on. This is the signal that's sent out to air traffic control to track aircraft, and it also is a vital component of another system called TCAS, which is Traffic Collision Avoidance System, fitted to all commercial aircraft and military aircraft, which alerts them to other aircraft on a collision course, but the ADS-B must be turned on.
U.S. President Donald Trump has responded to the deadly crash involving an American Airlines jet and a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter near Reagan National Airport. In his statement, President Trump offered his condolences and praised the efforts of first responders. He wrote that he is closely monitoring the situation and assured the public that more details would be provided as they arise. Later, Trump issued a second statement describing the crash as a bad situation that looks like it should have been prevented. The crash, which took place in Potomac River, involved 60 passengers on the flight and 3 soldiers aboard the helicopter. The leaders of several countries have expressed their condolences to U.S. President Donald Trump following the plane crash in Washington, D.C., including the president of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev. Kremlin Press Secretary Dmitry Peskov also confirmed that Russian figure skaters were on board. U.S. Figure Skating stated that several skaters and their families were on the plane, including 15 linked to figure skating. They were returning from the development camp at the U.S. Championship in Kansas. Russian state-run TASS reported ice skating coaches and former world champions Igana Shivokova and Vladimir Namov were among the victims. Authorities have not confirmed fatalities or survivors. Former U.S. Senator Bob Menendez has been sentenced to 11 years in federal prison after being convicted of bribery and corruption. Menendez is also known for his support for Armenian diaspora organization ANCA and his anti-Turkey stance.
Former U.S. Senator Bob Menendez was found guilty of accepting bribes, including gold bars and large sums of cash, in exchange for political favors benefiting businessmen connected to Egypt and Qatar. Menendez had served as chairman of the influential Senate Foreign Relations Committee before his conviction. Meanwhile, in a 12-minute speech before his sentencing, Menendez acknowledged past mistakes but defended his public service, according to several U.S. media outlets who were present in the room. The charges stemmed from an FBI raid on Menendez's home, where authorities discovered nearly $500,000 in cash, gold bars worth around $150,000, and a luxury vehicle. Menendez's wife, Nadine, who is facing her own trial, was linked to the case, though defense lawyers sought to shift the blame. Menendez's conviction also involved two businessmen, Wael Hana, an Egyptian-American, and Fred Dybes, a real estate developer, both of whom were sentenced to prison on Wednesday. A third accomplice, Jose Uribe, had pleaded guilty earlier and assisted investigators.
U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth posted on X today about his introductory call with Israeli Minister of Defense Israel Katz. Hegseth reaffirmed his strong, unbreakable bond between the U.S. and Israel, stressing America's unwavering support for Israel's security under President Trump's leadership. 3 Israeli hostages have been released in Gaza as part of a ceasefire deal. This marks the latest stage in a series of prisoner exchanges between Israel and Hamas.
Israeli hostage Agam Berger was released in Gaza on Thursday as a part of a ceasefire deal. The handover took place in Jabalia, where Berger was transferred to the International Committee of the Red Cross. Crowds of Palestinians watched the release. Along with Berger, 2 other Israeli hostages, Gadi Moses and Arbel Yahud, were also freed. More than 250 people were taken hostage during the October 7th. Some have been released in the past exchanges, but Israel still has 90 hostages in Gaza. The conflict has caused major loss of life and destruction in Gaza. Qatar, Egypt, and the United States have played a key role in mediating between Israel and Hamas, facilitating to reach a ceasefire and the release of hostages. A video released by the Islamic Jihadi group showed 2 of the freed hostages, Arbel Yahud and Gadi Moses, sharing an emotional hug and smile before their release on Thursday. An Israeli official said the 3 hostages would likely be taken to hospitals in Israel for checks, though that could change depending on their health. A crowd gathered in Tel Aviv to celebrate the release of the hostages, cheering when they heard the news of the release in northern Gaza.
The situation remains tense in the Democratic Republic of Congo. President Felix Tshisekedi has vowed to reclaim the city of Goma, which recently fell under the control of M23 rebels. Meanwhile, government-hired mercenaries have surrendered, and Rwanda is calling for a ceasefire in the region.
Democratic Republic of Congo, President Felix Tshisekedi has announced a strong and coordinated response to reclaim the city of Goma, which was seized by M23 rebels earlier this week. In a televised address, Tshisekedi labeled M23 a terrorist group and accused Rwanda of supporting the insurgents. He stated that he had convened emergency meetings with government and military officials to assess the situation and discuss countermeasures. Simultaneously, nearly 300 foreign mercenaries hired by the Congolese government surrendered to the rebel group. Initially recruited to strengthen the country's underfunded and poorly organized army, the mercenaries reportedly worsened the conflict due to a lack of coordination. The trapped mercenaries surrendered to UN peacekeepers and were repatriated through Rwanda. Before crossing the border, one of them was publicly reprimanded by an M23 spokesperson in front of journalists. Providing an update on the situation in Congo, the UN spokesperson stated, "Clashes continue in surrounding areas, including Sake, located northwest of Goma. While the security situation in the area has somewhat stabilized, sporadic shooting persists, and the overall humanitarian crisis remains severe."
In the capital, Kinshasa, the situation is also calm today, despite the calls for protests that we have seen. The main roads are reported to be empty and supermarkets are closed due to the high risk of looting. That's what our colleague in the peacekeeping mission are reporting. You will also remember that a few days ago we paid tribute to 3 UN peacekeepers who were killed in the last few days.
The humanitarian crisis in Congo is worsening, with increasing violence and looting severely hindering aid deliveries. Restrictions on relief operations remain in place. The UN has expressed concern over the limitations obstructing aid distribution.
The violence and looting of humanitarian warehouses has continued today in Goma, impacting both the ability of aid workers to respond as well as obviously putting them at risk. Since the escalation of fighting, our humanitarian partners have recorded more than 2,000 injuries caused by weapons and explosive shrapnel. Humanitarian workers are treating injuries where possible. Several bodies of people killed remains in the streets, while water and electricity supplies remains cut off since the 26th of January.
Meanwhile, Rwanda, an alleged supporter of M23 movement, has called for a ceasefire in the region and urged the Congolese government to negotiate with the rebels. However, the Rwandan government has denied any involvement in the conflict. According to Rwanda's foreign minister, fighting in Goma has ceased since the city is now under M23 control. Residents of Goma report that looting and sporadic gunfire are still ongoing. The Congolese government considers M23 a terrorist group and refuses to engage in direct negotiations with them. Reports suggest that the rebels are advancing south from Goma, attempting to expand their controlled territory. Videos circulating on social media show armed fighters moving along the M23's reported route, although it remains unclear which side they belong to.
Turkey, Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan signed the Ankara Declaration, reaffirming their commitment to regional cooperation and support for Azerbaijan's post-conflict reconstruction efforts in Karabakh and East Zangezur.
The agreement signed by Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, Azerbaijani Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov and Uzbekistan's Bakhtiyor Saidov underscores the three nations' continued backing of each other's sovereignty, territorial integrity and internationally recognized borders. Speaking at a joint press conference in Ankara following the signing, Hakan Fidan emphasized the significance of the Middle Corridor, an alternative trade route linking Asia and Europe. The most reliable, fastest and economical route between Asia and Europe is the Central Asia, Caspian Sea, South Caucasus, Turkey corridor, Fidan said, highlighting disruptions in global supply chains due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Russia-Ukraine war, and ongoing instability in the Middle East. The trilateral gathering, bringing together the foreign affairs, transport and trade ministries of the three nations, marked the second such high-level meeting. Officials discussed expanding economic cooperation and infrastructure development, positioning Turkey, Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan as key players in regional trade.
A recent poll in Armenia shows growing dissatisfaction, with most citizens believing the country is heading in the wrong direction. Economic struggles and security concerns are top issues, with EU accession remains a divisive topic.
A recent survey by Gallup International Association reveals that 58.5% of Armenians believe the country is on the wrong track, while only 24.2% think it's heading in the right direction. Security concerns top the list of issues, with 39.5% citing them as the most urgent problem. Border demarcation was mentioned by 21% of respondents, while 15.6% highlighted the threat of war. In addition to security and political concerns, poverty remains a significant challenge. Previous data shows that over 25% of the Armenian population lives below the poverty line, especially in rural areas where access to jobs, healthcare, and essential services is limited. Inflation and rising living costs have further worsened economic conditions, leading to widespread dissatisfaction with the government's economic policies. As a result, 14% of respondents identified economic challenges as the main problem. The survey, conducted between January 20th and 22nd, also found that 55% of Armenians support the country's EU accession, though opinions are divided, with 12% somewhat opposed and 19.3% completely against it. In the same time, 51% of respondents believe Armenia will join the EU within the next 10 years, though 40% disagree. Regarding national security, 27% of Armenians believe that the country's EU aspirations and its strategic partnership with the US will enhance security, while 24.2% fear these steps could create new risks. With growing concerns over security, economic instability, and poverty, the survey underscores a mounting sentiment that Armenia is struggling to navigate its challenges, leaving many uncertain about the country's future direction.
The term of the European Union's monetary mission in Armenia has been extended until February 19, 2027. The decision was made by the EU ambassador in Brussels. According to the draft, the number and makeup of the observers will stay the same. The decision still needs to be approved by the EU foreign ministers soon. Previously, Moscow accused the EU monitors of spying under the guise of their mission and making the situation in the region unstable. Baku has also called for the removal of EU observers and described the presence of monitors from third world countries as a cause for concern. The Georgian delegation has decided to halt its activity in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Alnini Nikolashvili has more on that from Tbilisi.
The parliamentary delegation of Georgia is ceasing its participation in the work of Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe following the resolution that imposes restrictions on its delegation. The decision made by the ruling Georgian Dream Party comes after the PASE vote on January 29 to limit Georgia's participation, citing concerns over the latest political developments in the country. The resolution, which was approved by 114 votes in favor, 13 against and 7 abstentions, reduces Georgia's role in the Assembly by restricting its delegation's ability to hold key positions and fully participate in committees. PASE also called for new parliamentary elections and release of political prisoners, set an April 25 deadline for meeting its conditions. In response, Georgian Parliament Deputy Speaker Tiat Olgiani called this resolution unjust and baseless, stating that while Georgia's delegations remains recognized, it will no longer take part in PASE's activities. Prime Minister Irakli Qobakhidze also criticized this decision, arguing that it contradicts the recognition of Georgia's elected representatives. He claimed the move reflects political bias and insisted it would not impact Georgia's broader policy direction. However, Qobakhidze suggested that Georgia might reconsider its participation if the Assembly stance changes. However, the opposition groups welcomed PASE's resolution. PASE will reassess Georgia's status in April, depending on Georgian government's actions. We will continue to follow developments. It's Nina Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, Georgia, News.
Turkey is set to unveil a $2 billion high-tech investment package next month, which includes its ambitious goal of reaching the moon with a domestically designed and manufactured spacecraft. This is according to Minister of Industry and Technology, Mehmet Fatih Kajir.
Speaking about Turkey's lunar program, Minister of Industry and Technology Mehmet Fatih Kajir stated that the country plans to send a spacecraft to the moon using a vehicle entirely designed, produced and launched domestically. He emphasized the importance of joining the renewed global space race, in which countries like the United States and China are actively participating. He also highlighted the growing global space economy, which is projected to reach $1 trillion, stressing that Turkey must take strategic steps now to secure a larger share of the industry. Kajir confirmed that the initial step of the Moon project will involve launching a satellite into lunar orbit. The satellite will gather and transmit data to Earth while performing a soft landing rehearsal. The minister also stated that Turkey is accelerating investments in high-tech industries. The government is set to announce a $2 billion investment package next month, with a focus on industrial robotics, biotechnology, semiconductor production, and renewable energy technologies, such as solar panels and wind turbines.
NASA's asteroid samples have revealed organic compounds, including amino acids and nucleus bases. Scientists say these findings are proof that asteroids may have helped seed early Earth.
NASA's analysis of asteroid Bennu samples has found key organic compounds, such as amino acids and nucleobases, essential for life. Collected by OSIRIS-REx in 2020 and delivered to Earth in 2023, these samples suggest that asteroids may have significantly contributed to the emergence of life on early Earth. Two studies in Nature Astronomy and Nature revealed that the samples contain organic compounds and minerals from evaporated brine, suggesting conditions for prebiotic chemistry. Unlike meteorites, which can be contaminated after landing, these samples offer an untainted record of the solar system's early chemistry. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson states that their main goal is to assist scientists in studying planets for years to come.
And why are we doing this? Because at NASA, we are trying to find out who we are, what we are, where we came from. And this mission will help our scientists investigate planet formation for generations to come. And it's going to deepen our understanding of our solar system.
Scientists assume Bennu formed from a large icy celestial body, believed to be destroyed 1 to 2 billion years ago. The remnants became Bennu and other rubble pile asteroids, preserving ancient materials that could reveal clues about the origins of life.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.